Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to talk about the eclipses again. I recently did a video about the eclipses, and after I posted it, I remembered a couple things, of course. And there was a comment left about something that I had heard before, but I had never verified it myself, and so I decided to go ahead and verify it, and then I have that additional item to share with you as well. Now, before there's any confusion, this is not a biohazard sign. It's actually 3 horseshoes, and it's a brand called Ariat, and it is pronounced Ariat. I went to the official website or the official YouTube channel, and that's how they pronounce it. I'll put the link for that in the description below in case anybody doubts. But it's a brand. I don't know if they're outside the United States or not, so I just want to clarify that this is not like a doomsday hoodie that I'm wearing. It's Ariat, and they make really nice clothes. Okay, so I want to do a quick review of what I talked about in that last video, and then after that, share the new items, okay? So we have these 2 main eclipses. There's the one that was in 2017, and then there's the one that's coming up in April on the 8th of this year, 2024. And then there's one that happened in October of 2023, and I find that one significant too. I feel like it's part of this series. But the 2017 and the 2024 eclipse, they're spaced by about 7 years, okay? Just about 7 years. I think it's also important to note that the 2024 eclipse, it's going to happen the day after conference, okay? So you're going to have Sunday the 7th and then Monday the 8th, and that's the day that it takes place. These 3 eclipses, and this just blows my mind. And I feel like this is one of the most sure signs that you could have, just because it's so statistically improbable that this would happen. All 3 eclipses go over sites that are significant to the church. So the one in 2017, the path of totality, which is the shadow where you get the full effect of the eclipse, the path of totality went over Jackson County, or in other words, the site of the New Jerusalem in Independence, and then far west, which used to be church headquarters, and also Adamondayaman. Okay? Those sites fit within the path of totality. If the path of totality had been adjusted by just a few miles, it wouldn't include all those sites. So it had to, take that path. The one in 2023 that we just had went over Utah. And it took the only path that it could to miss the maximum number of temples in Utah. I'm sure you're aware there are many temples in Utah, but there's this big section of Utah, like central and southern Utah, where there aren't very many temples. The one temple that it did go over, which is a temple that's in operation, was the Monticello, Utah temple. It also went over the Manti Temple, but the Manti Temple was out of commission for renovations. And then somebody in the comments had said that Ephraim, because there's going to be a temple in Ephraim was not in the path of totality. But it doesn't matter. There's only one temple in operation that was in the path of totality for that eclipse. Now, the one that's coming up on April 8th of this year, it's going to go over the Sacred Grove, and then after that, it's going to go over Kirtland, Ohio. And Kirtland, Ohio is the site of the first temple in this dispensation. So these are all very, very significant sites that are specific to our church. And I feel like everybody that's in the church should be aware of this. I don't know what it means, but it's happening. And I think everybody should be aware. And then in the video that I made, the thing that I had just realized at that time was that the eclipses go over essentially these sites of church headquarters, but in reverse order. So listen up, because there was some confusion about this in the last video, but it's very clear, okay? In the early church, okay, in the early days of the church headquarters at one time was in New York, right? It was basically wherever Joseph Smith was in those very, very early days. So it was in New York, And then at one point it was in Kirtland, Ohio. And then after that, it went to a few other places, Nauvoo, far west Missouri, right? So, but in the early days, that's where it was. And so after that, the Saints went to Utah, and Utah is currently where church headquarters is. And it's the majority of the time of this dispensation, it's been in Utah. Now, sometime in the near future, it's going to change and it's going to go back to Jackson County, Missouri. Okay. And so think of it like this. You have New York, Ohio, and then Utah, and then Jackson County, Missouri. That's the order of things. Okay. The eclipses go in reverse order. First, it went over Jackson County, and then it went over Utah. Even though it didn't go over Salt Lake City, it went over Utah. And then the last one goes over Palmyra, the Sacred Grove, and Kirtland, Ohio. Okay, that's all that I mean. It's interesting that it happens like that, that it's in order. It's already amazing that it even goes over those sites, that all three of these go over these sites, but they do. And not only that, but it's in reverse order. And it also seems to match the proportion of time that church headquarters are in these different locations, meaning that if you go from the April 2024 eclipse, you only go back a short ways, just 6 months, to get to the Utah eclipse. That's a very short time. And then from the Utah eclipse to the Jackson County eclipse, it's a much longer time. You have to go back to 2017. Just like how the church was originally in those eastern states and those eastern sites for just a short time, and the majority of this time, the church headquarters has been in Utah, and then ultimately it's going to be moved to Jackson County. So hopefully that's clear, okay? And I think that's pretty amazing. Now, I got a comment from the Scott and Camber channel. They have a channel. I'll put a link for it in the description below in case you want to check them out. And it looks like this comment is from Camber. She says, also, the 2017 solar eclipse was on President Monson's birthday. And President Monson was the president of the church at that time. Remember, the other really interesting thing about these eclipses is that the first one happened just a few months before President Nelson became president of the church. And we don't know when his presidency is going to end. It kind of feels like we might be coming toward the end. I mean, who knows? So we'll just have to wait and see how that story unfolds. But then you have this one. and you know, if you were to guess, I would say that his presidency has taken place, at least probably the majority of his presidency has taken place between these two main eclipses, 2017 and 2024. So, but in 2017, when this happened, President Monson was still alive. He was president of the church. And that eclipse happened on his birthday. It was on August 21st. I went and checked it out. That is his birthday, which is interesting because we've noticed a couple interesting things with President Nelson's birthday. So, for example, when he turned 98, the day before his birthday. So on that birthday, he became the oldest living apostle or prophet of this dispensation. So that was already really noteworthy. But what was very strange is the day before, Queen Elizabeth, who was the longest reigning British monarch, she passed away the day before. And then we've noticed all these other notable deaths of people that were the longest serving or the longest living of their kind. Like on New Year's Eve of that year, Pope Benedict the 16th, he passed away. He was the longest living pope. In the church's history, he was the longest living pope. There was Mikhail Gorbachev just a little bit, like a week or two before Queen Elizabeth. And there's like a whole list. I'm not going to go over that list right now, but that was something interesting that happened in conjunction with President Nelson's birthday. It's also interesting that last year you had two of the deadliest disasters for the entire year that took place the day before and on his birthday. It was the Morocco earthquake, and then there was the Storm Daniel that it hit Greece and it hit Turkey and stuff, but it really affected Libya. And they still don't have a death toll, but they project it to be, somewhere between 10 to 20,000. Those two were the number 2 and number 3 deadliest disasters last year. The deadliest disaster was the Turkey earthquake that split that Mount of Olives in two in Turkey. So that was another interesting thing that happened at the time of his birthday. Another interesting thing that happened last year, because last year he turned 99, there was, during his presidency, there's been 3 blue moons. The first one happened 17 days after he became president of the church. It was not only a blue moon, but it was also a super moon, and it was also a lunar eclipse or a blood moon. Okay, that was 17 days after he became president of the church. Then in 2020 on Halloween, there was a blue moon. And then 9 days before he turned 99 on 9/9, meaning September 9th, was this last blue moon. And it was also a super moon. So it was a super blue moon. So I might have to make a spreadsheet for interesting things that happen on the birthdays of presidents of the church, but it's kind of weird. And so this is just another one, the eclipse on President Monson's birthday as he's president of the church. It's weird. So thank you, Camber, for that. Okay, and then the last 2 things I want to mention, I meant to mention the fact that the 3 eclipses, if you draw them on the map and they're all overlaid over each other, they form the shape of like an A. Okay, the letter A, or in Paleo Hebrew. So not the modern Hebrew script. The script that you typically think of when you think of Hebrew, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Paleo Hebrew, which is the same as Phoenician. So in that script, the shape of the eclipses, the paths of totality, if you draw it out, is in the shape of the letter Aleph, or A, the first letter of the alphabet. Now, other people have noted that there's a couple other eclipses that are taking place. I think in like 20, I talked about it or I put it in my comment in the last video that I pinned. It's going to be 2027 and I think 2034. There are going to be 2 eclipses that are closer to Israel that make an X in that area. Now, it's not unusual to have eclipses, cross paths like that. Like it's fairly common. But if you want to take it that far, those 2 eclipses put together, they make an X. And in Paleo Hebrew, the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Tav, and it looks like an X. Okay. And so I don't know how I necessarily feel about this, because I'm not even looking out that far into the future. I really am not. If we get through the next few years and the second coming still hasn't happened, maybe I'll have more interest at that time. But in any case, people have put together that it's like you have the Aleph or the A or the Alpha over the United States, and then you have the Tav or the Omega, Alpha and Omega, the first and last letter, the last letter over the around the Middle East. I'd be maybe a little bit more intrigued if it was actually over Israel, or if one of those paths of totality went over Jerusalem. And from what I saw, I don't think that they do. I think that they cross somewhere near the Red Sea, but I don't think they actually go over Israel. But there's that to take note of. Okay, so that would be a really interesting thing, because first of all, Alpha and Omega, Aleph and Tav, right? That's one way that Christ refers to himself, and he's referred to as that in the scriptures, meaning that he's the beginning and the end. You could also think about the times of the Gentiles, how in this dispensation, It's reverse. Whereas when Christ came in the dispensation of the meridian of time, the gospel first went to the Jews and then it went to the Gentiles. But in this last dispensation, it's reverse. It first goes to the Gentiles and then to the Jews. And so you could kind of like think of it that way too. First, you have the eclipse over the United States, which would be pretty emblematic of, the church, the Gentiles. And when I say Gentiles, I don't need to go on this tangent, but let's do it. Brigham Young and Joseph Fielding Smith said that the majority of people that are in the church actually do have literal blood of Israel in them. So when we say Gentiles, we're not necessarily saying that you or I are like pure Gentile, but rather because we lost our identity after the Assyrians took the northern kingdom and were scattered all over the world. For all intents and purposes, we became Gentiles, but you still have that blood in you. And if you don't, that's fine. Then you just get adopted into Israel. But so anyway, I just wanted to say that. Yeah. Okay. And then, so that's interesting to note. And then the last thing that I wanted to share, and I think that this is pretty interesting. So, well, actually, no, there's actually kind of two things. So the 2017 eclipse happened on the 21st of August, 2017. Now, 21 is 3 sevens. Okay. It's 3 sevens. 3 times 7 is 21. The eclipse in 2023 in October happened on the 14th. And so that is 2 sevens. 2 times 7 is 14. So you see where I'm going with this? 3, 2, and then the last one, it's not 7, it's 8, which is kind of interesting. Because it's like, okay, 3, 2, because like 8 is usually representative of a new beginning, the start of a new cycle. And we've played around with this idea on the channel of 8 and 18 possibly being symbolic of this change from this period of time that we're in right now to the millennium, like a change, like this cycle is complete. Now, that may not be a thing. We do know that you have these first 6,000 years, and then the millennium is actually the 7,000 years. So it doesn't really work out with that, but you get you understand what I'm getting at. What is interesting though, is that the October 2023 eclipse, it happened on the 14th, which was 7 days after the war in Israel started. That's another very interesting thing. And I'm not the only one that thinks that's interesting. Israel 365, they're like, hey, there was this eclipse that went over the United States just 7 days after the war started. And they did an article about it. And then I did a video about that, what they said, and I shared my thoughts. So that's another interesting thing about that Utah eclipse. 7 days after the war started in Israel. It's also interesting to note that President Nelson, on the 7th of April, he's gonna reach his 40th anniversary of being an apostle. Okay, so he's gonna have been an apostle for 40 years and moving on into his 41st year, but he'll reach that 40 mark, and it's going to be on April 7th, the day before the eclipse. And 40 is an interesting number. We've talked about it many times. It's a number of testing, but I think even more, it's a number of cleansing. It's a number of purification, cleansing. And that is what's going to happen at the second coming when the burning takes place. So there are just all sorts of interesting things going on with these eclipses. So many interesting things. I don't think that we should ignore it. I don't think that we should minimize it. I also don't think that we should necessarily say what it means, because I don't think any of us know. But whatever it means, we'll know it at some point. We can hope that, the second coming will happen maybe before the eclipse, maybe on the eclipse. And when I say second coming, before you type, well, which appearance are you talking about? You know, there's multiple appearances. Whichever. Pick one. It doesn't matter. It'd be interesting if something happened on that day, before that day, shortly after that day, whatever. But, you know, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But the fact of the matter is it's happening for some reason. And it's beyond coincidence. It's beyond coincidence. I mean, here, between everything that we just talked about, it kind of ties these different concepts together. Church headquarters, church history, this last dispensation, President Monson, President Nelson, as well as Israel with the war. So it's weird. You know, and then the Aleph and Tav, if that's actually a thing, that's another way that Israel gets tied in. So the 7 days after the war with that eclipse, that ties in Israel with this. And then the Aleph and the Tav, if that turns out to be a thing, that also brings Israel into this. So it's like a really big thing, I think, symbolically speaking. Yeah, that's it though. That's all that I have to share. I think I racked my brain. You know, if I have to do another video, fine. But I think I got it all this time. I might have to keep it straight. I'll probably have to make a spreadsheet. That's the point of making the spreadsheets, is so I can, so I don't forget things. That's what you have to do. That's what all of us should do. You know, you come across a quote that you really like, write it down or save it somewhere. Collect them, you know, so you can always easily refer back to them when you need them. Do what I'm doing. Do spreadsheets or do a Word document, whatever works for you. Keep track of things because, you know, it's huge being able to, you know, see the big picture and not forget. You know, we have this this thing in life where we forget things naturally. And so you have to intentionally avoid that by writing things down. The natural man way is to just, you know, it's easier just to, you know, live your life and try and remember. But the better way is to record significant things and then get a bigger and bigger and clearer picture of whatever it is that you're studying. So, okay. All right. So that's it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.